You have something important to do. You know it's important. You've known for days, maybe weeks. Nobody is confused about whether it needs to get done. And yet, here you are, watching a YouTube video about procrastination instead of doing it. I'm not judging. I've been there more times than I can count. I once cleaned my entire apartment, reorganized my bookshelf by color, and learned how to solve a Rubik's Cube in a single afternoon because I had a deadline the next morning. The apartment had never been cleaner. The deadline had never been closer. And the thing I was supposed to do hadn't been touched. Procrastination isn't laziness. That's the first thing you need to understand. And it's the thing almost every productivity guru gets wrong. Lazy people don't care about the task. Procrastinators care enormously. That's why it feels so awful. You're not indifferent. You're stuck. And there's a real reason your brain gets stuck. And once you see it, a lot of your own behavior starts making sense for the first time. If you're the person who never gets it until someone gives you the right analogy, this channel is for you. Subscribe. Let me start inside your brain, because that's where the war is happening. Your brain has two systems that are constantly fighting over the steering wheel. One of them thinks long-term. It plans, it strategizes, it knows that finishing the report today means less stress tomorrow. This is your prefrontal cortex, the rational, forward-thinking part of your brain. Think of it as the adult in the room. The other system thinks only about right now. It wants comfort, pleasure, and the avoidance of anything unpleasant. This is your limbic system, the emotional, impulsive, ancient part of your brain that evolved millions of years before the prefrontal cortex even existed. Think of it as a toddler with a remote control. Procrastination is what happens when the toddler grabs the remote. The adult says, "We should work on the presentation." The toddler says, "That sounds hard and boring. Let's watch another video." The adult says, "But the deadline is Friday." The toddler says, "Friday isn't now." And because the toddler is faster, louder, and has been running the show for millions of years longer than the adult has existed, the toddler usually wins. This isn't a character flaw. This is architecture. Your brain was designed for a world where immediate threats and immediate rewards were all that mattered. A lion is chasing you. Run now. Berries are on that bush. Eat now. There was no reason to evolve a system that prioritized something due next Friday because nothing in the savannah had a due date. The prefrontal cortex showed up much later in evolutionary history and bolted itself onto the existing system. It's powerful, but it tires easily, and every time it has to fight the limbic system for control, it burns energy. That's why procrastination gets worse when you're tired, stressed, or hungry. The adult goes to sleep and the toddler throws a party. But the toddler with a remote is only half the story. The other half explains why we procrastinate on some things, but not others. And this is where it gets personal. You don't procrastinate on things you enjoy. Nobody procrastinates on opening a birthday gift or eating their favorite meal. You procrastinate on things that trigger a negative emotion. And the specific emotion matters more than the task itself. Think of every task on your to-do list as a door. Behind some doors is mild discomfort, like doing laundry. You don't love it, but the door opens easily. Behind other doors is something your brain genuinely doesn't want to face. Maybe it's anxiety about failing. Maybe it's resentment because somebody dumped the task on you. Maybe it's perfectionism whispering that if you can't do it perfectly, you shouldn't start at all. Maybe it's boredom so intense it almost physically hurts. The emotion is the lock on the door. The harder the emotion, the bigger the lock. And the more your brain looks for literally anything else to do instead of facing it. That's why you'll happily spend 2 hours organizing your desk to avoid a 30-minute email you're anxious about. The desk doesn't have a lock, the email does. This is also why generic advice like just break it into smaller steps sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. Breaking a task into smaller steps helps when the lock is overwhelmed. The task felt too big, and smaller pieces make the door feel lighter. But if the lock is fear of judgment or perfectionism, smaller steps don't help at all, because the emotion is attached to the task itself, not the size of it. Writing one paragraph of the essay is just as scary as writing 10 if the real fear is that someone will read it and think you're stupid. Quick favor before the next part, because this next section is the one that changed how I personally deal with procrastination. If this has been useful, hit the like button. On a small channel like this, it makes a real difference in whether other people ever see the video. Back to it. Here's the part that makes procrastination feel so uniquely terrible: the relief loop. When you avoid the task and do something easier instead, your brain gets a small hit of relief. The anxiety about the task temporarily drops. You scrolled social media, the dread went away for a minute, your brain logged that as a reward. Avoidance worked. Think of procrastination like scratching a mosquito bite. The bite itches. You scratch it. For about 2 seconds, it feels better. Then it itches worse than before. So you scratch again. More relief, then more itching, worse than the last time. The scratching isn't solving the problem. It's making the problem worse while convincing you it's the solution. Every time you avoid the task, the dread around it grows slightly. The deadline gets closer, which adds time pressure on top of whatever emotion was already there. Now you're not just anxious about the task, you're anxious about the task, plus guilty about procrastinating, plus stressed about the shrinking timeline. The mosquito bite is swelling, and your brain's only known remedy is to scratch it again. This is why procrastinators often describe a spiral. It's not that the task gets harder, it's that the emotional cost of approaching it compounds every day you avoid it. By the time the deadline is tomorrow, the lock on the door is 10 times bigger than it was when you first put the task off, and the only thing that finally forces you through is panic. The limbic system finally agrees to act, not because the task matters, but because the immediate pain of missing the deadline now outweighs the discomfort of doing the work. That panic-driven burst is what people call working well under pressure. I used to tell myself I worked better under pressure too. I didn't. I worked the same. I just couldn't start without the pressure, because the toddler wouldn't hand over the remote until the house was on fire. So what actually works? Not willpower. Willpower is the adult trying to wrestle the remote from the toddler by force, and the adult gets tired. You need strategies that either calm the toddler down or make the toddler want to cooperate. The single most effective technique I've found is shrinking the commitment to something so small your brain can't justify avoiding it. Not write the report, not even write the introduction, just open the document and type one sentence. That's it, one sentence. Think of it like getting into a cold pool. If you stand at the edge thinking about jumping in, your brain will invent 1,000 reasons to walk away. But if you just put one foot on the first step, something shifts. You're in now. The water isn't as bad as you imagined. A minute later, you're waist deep and wondering what you were so afraid of. The reason this works is because the hardest part of any procrastinated task is the transition from not doing it to doing it. Once you're in, the emotional resistance drops dramatically. Your brain realizes the water isn't freezing, the toddler calms down, and the adult can finally steer. The other thing that works is naming the emotion behind the avoidance. Not in a therapy journal way, just honestly asking yourself, what am I actually feeling about this task? If the answer is, I'm afraid it won't be good enough, you've found the lock. And a named fear is smaller than an unnamed one. Unnamed dread is a shadow on the wall that could be anything. Named fear is a specific thing you can talk back to. Let me stack all this together so it locks in. Procrastination is a war between an adult and a toddler for control of the remote, and the toddler is faster. Every task has a door, and the emotion attached to it is the lock. The harder the emotion, the bigger the lock, and your brain will do anything to avoid opening it. Avoidance creates a relief loop that works like scratching a mosquito bite, brief comfort followed by worse itching. The emotional cost compounds daily until panic finally forces action. Willpower alone doesn't beat it. Shrinking the commitment to something absurdly small, like getting one foot into the cold pool, bypasses the toddler. And naming the specific emotion behind the avoidance shrinks the lock. That's procrastination. Not laziness, not a moral failure, not a discipline problem. A mismatch between ancient brain wiring and modern task demands, made worse by an emotional feedback loop most people never see. If this helped you understand your own procrastination in a way nothing else has, do me 2 quick favors. Hit the like button and subscribe so you catch the next one. I'm deciding between two topics for the next video, and I want you to pick. Should I explain how motivation actually works using a fire analogy, or how anxiety works using a smoke detector analogy? Drop A or B in the comments, and whichever gets more votes, I'll make first. Thanks for watching.